Good morning.
Good morning.
Lovely late spring, vivacious morning. It's been raining a lot. I know people are tired of it, but that's why it's the Emerald Valley. And I have these pear trees that I tend, and I was wandering around in the orchard yesterday, and there's almost no pears on the pear trees. And I was a little disappointed initially. And then I go, well, these are beautiful trees. And I've gotten hundreds and hundreds of pounds, and it's okay if there's no pears on the pear trees. Fortunately, I don't earn my living selling pears. That would be a little more challenging. So it's okay. There's other fruit trees. There's apples and figs, and diversity is wise. That's part of the topic of what we're up to with ecology and Buddhism. So this is the fourth talk in a series of 4 talks. This talk is Zen, Art, Poetry, and Nature. The first talk a couple of weeks ago was by Ajo. And a couple of the points he stressed was the need for spiritual nourishment, the deep need for spiritual nourishment, and what it means to be alive. So, thank you. We will all work with that. And then the following 2 talks, 2 Tuesdays ago and the last Tuesday via video, some of us were here, some online. And that was, this whole series is sponsored by the Buddha Eco Dharma Group. Thank you very much, you folks. And hopefully you will continue with nurturing us with that topic. So the second talk title was Connection and Community. And there were three people on the panel. I think Alisa, Talkila, and I don't know the monk's name, so I'll call him Brother Monk. And they were just exploring the idea of ecology, Buddhism, some of the trials and tribulations, and solutions, which hopefully you've seen those films, so I won't go into that very much. And then the second talk was 2 people, Roshi Joan Halifax from Upaya Zen Center in New Mexico. She's pretty well known. And Christiana from, where's she from? Costa Rica. And they were all very articulate, just really a joy to listen to them. And you know, this topic has been around for many years, certainly extensively from the 60s, and for many centuries, but specifically more energetic of late. And you may have you have your favorite writers, authors, playwrights, activists who've been engaged. Henry David Thoreau is actually a favorite of mine. So that's going back to 1860 or so. Rachel Carson, 1950s. How about this one, Joni Mitchell? Now the song Woodstock has some interesting lyrics in it. And she wrote that in 1969 as a very young woman. We are stardust, We are golden. We are billion-year-old carbon, but we're caught in a devil's bargain. And we've got to get back to the garden. So she's quite prophetic for like a 25-year-old folk singer who became quite a accomplished jazz musician. And my favorite album is called Blue. Prayer for the Great Family. Gratitude to Mother Earth, sailing through the night and day, and to her soil, rich, rare, and sweet. In our minds, so be it. Gratitude to plants, the sun-facing, light-changing leaf, and fine root hairs, standing still through wind and rain. Their dance is in the flowing spiral grain. In our minds, so be it. Gratitude to air, bearing the soaring swift and the silent owl at dawn. Breath of our song, clear spirit breeze in our minds, so be it. Gratitude to wild beings, our brothers, teaching secrets, freedoms, and ways, who share with us their milk. Self-complete, brave, and aware. In our minds, so be it. Gratitude to water, clouds, lakes, rivers, glaciers, holding or releasing, streaming through our bodies, salty seas. In our minds, so be it. Gratitude to the sun, blistering, pulsing light, through trunks of trees, through mists, warming caves where bears and snakes sleep. He who wakes us, in our minds, so be it. Gratitude to the sky, who holds billions of stars and goes yet beyond that, beyond all powers and thoughts, and yet is within us. Grandfather's space. The mind is his wife, so be it. After a Mohawk prayer, Gary Snyder, who just celebrated his 92nd birthday. And one of our great eco-activists, who went to Japan in 1955 to study Zen. Thank you, Gary Snyder. So some of the work he explored was bioregionalism, like deep ecology. So everyone lives in a bioregion. We live in a bioregion. And this particular bioregion is old-growth Douglas fir and cedar and hemlock and oak savannas and rivers. So we are in the midst of that. So part of our work is to actually be there and interact with the various life forms that are part of that bioregion. And we have these two wonderful rivers nearby, the Willamette River and Mackenzie River. And our water source is from the Mackenzie River, which comes from Clear Lake up the Highway 126. And there's a great spring that feeds the end of that lake that comes in very cold, snow melt, and comes from underground. Occasionally, the Sangha does a hike around that lake. It's very cold water. I recommend going up there and jumping in. It's very invigorating. No side effects like coffee. Cold water is good, trust me. And there's a wonderful trail along the Mackenzie River. It's like 25 miles. And somebody here was an Eagle Scout, and they used to hike it every year. He's not here today. Matthew. He told me about that. So, yeah, we're blessed with these two rivers. And then the Willamette flows to Portland, which meets the Columbia. The Columbia flows to the ocean. Woody Guthrie sang about the Columbia River. We wash our bowls in this water. The 1.5 billion kilometers of water are split by photosynthesis and reconstituted by respiration once every 2 million years or so. It has the flavor of ambrosial dew. Su Tong Po sat out one whole night by a creek on the slopes of Mount Lu. Next morning, he showed this poem to his teacher. The stream with its sounds is a long, broad tongue. The looming mountain is a wide body. Throughout the night, song after song, how can I speak at dawn? Old Master Chang Tsung approved him. 2 centuries later, Dogen said, sounds of streams and shapes of mountains. The sounds never stop, and the shapes never cease. Was it Su who woke, or was it the mountains and streams? Billions of beings see the morning star, and all become Buddhas. Right? When the Buddha was under the Bodhi Tree, and the mudra was he touched the earth. So yeah, legend has it that Buddha's mother was holding on to a branch and gave birth to Buddha. A relationship of trees throughout Buddhism. And then he sat for a week under the Bodhi tree and had his illuminating experience. And then he had his parinirvana in a grove of trees. And of course, the Bodhi tree is a prominent site where people travel, to visit that tree and circumambulate it. And there's another one in Sri Lanka that actually, King Ashoka's daughter and son, I believe it was the daughter, brought a shoot from the Bodhi Tree in Bodh Gaya to Sri Lanka, and that's a major pilgrimage site. So I went there, and it's quite lovely. You don't hear that part of history about Ashoka's daughter. So here we have a reproduction of a painting by a Chinese painter, Awasaki Sunio. And he was a scientist, a biologist all of his life. And then he took up painting, but very unusual approach in my mind. And that he absolutely loved the Heart Sutra. So this is a picture of a waterfall. At the very bottom to the left is a human being standing. And that waterfall is actually the Heart Sutra in Chinese characters. It's distorted, which I really like, so you can't see the characters. And it's from a text called Painting Enlightenment. Actually, Ajo gifted me this book a couple of years ago. So there you have it. So on the topic of water, yeah. So, and to him that expressed many things. One was impermanence and just that continuous flow of life. So there are problems and then there's creativity. So recently I had invited a wildlife biologist to come to my place. I live west of town in woodlands and an orchard. And I'm self-educated, so I know a little bit about the topic as far as working with nature and so forth and so on. But I thought it'd be really nice to have a scientist come. And so the way that came about was I was standing in my backyard with my apprentice, and these 5 elegant birds flew over. And I've lived there 38 years, and I've never seen these birds. What could these birds possibly be? So I called the Corps of Engineers and said, I just saw these amazing birds. Does anybody there know what they could be? And they said, oh yeah, I'll hook you up with them. So then I talked to that person, a wildlife biologist, Kathleen, and she said, oh, they're swans. And they're quite elegant. So I said, would you come over and educate me, please, about some of the life forms here? So she did. She came over, and we stood out in the woodlands, and about 30 feet away was a deer just sitting there watching us. So that was quite lovely. And what she talked about was habitat. So all the life forms there need habitat like we do. So the microorganisms, the insects, the birds, the deer, the bats, the newts. So we're working at creating habitat, which means you leave some trees, you cut them and let them decompose, just like this happens in a forest. And some you cut to where they're dead standing for woodpeckers. And some are living, and then they decompose and feed the soil, and various microorganisms live in there. So a very complex network. So I was excited about that. And she said, well, you might want to put some bird baths out there too, because it gets dry. So then we're going to bring some basalt stone bird baths in and set them in the forest. And the animals, they know this. They like this. They like people, actually. They're just a little leery of us. But then I thought, well, you know, we should put out some artwork for the animals. So that's the next project. Some people will help me. We'll do sculptures and such and put them in the forest and have some benches. So then you get the merging of the wild and human. So my proposal is we redesign all the cities of the world, which is very doable. So why not? So this painting by the same artist, many of you are familiar with, it's a double helix of the DNA in Chinese characters, and that's the Heart Sutra. And he's very specific, so the whole painting is the Heart Sutra, character by character. And what's interesting about this is he placed it in a field of space as if it were a galaxy. And he altered it. He altered the image of the DNA, so it's not specific to any one life form, but it's a general that includes all life forms, because it's the Heart Sutra. Right? Thank goodness for artists. Tara's dream. Somewhere on the dark side of dawn, the light of Venus illuminates a being with 7 heads and 1,000 arms. Poised in the mudra of an archer with bow drawn. The arrow tip dipped in the nectar of wisdom and compassion. The arrow loosed, moving far beyond the speed of light. Pierces the citadels of diluted power in the 10 directions and strikes to the core of the secret heart of the ungraspable nature of being. Are there any questions?
Kogen,
Hey.
thank you, 2 points. Thank you for always sharing your pairs with the Sangha when there are pairs. I can speak to how wonderful they are. Second point is that I live just up the hill about a mile, and my yard is wooded, and a few years ago, the deer fence that was on the back part of the property just got all ratty looking, and so we had it removed, and so now the deer, and also it kind of coincided with this illness that I have, so I really can't maintain the manicured look. And nor is it really appropriate. It's a kind of a wooded lot. So I can't maintain it. So without the deer fence, the deer now come and they have a resting place in the back part of the house now. And I've just returned it to nature, and I can go out on the deck, and they aren't disturbed at all. and they come at the same time every day, so that it's kind of, you can see that it's become part of their habitat. And yeah, it's really, really, really wonderful. And it works from their vantage point and my vantage point. They love to nibble on the quote-unquote invasive shiny geranium, which is, come to stay, but we're all invaders. So they keep it lower. Anyway, it's like opening up your yard, my little yard, to nature. Anyway, it's
Thank you.
lovely.
Interspecies communication.
Yeah.
Kogen,
Right.
I have a request. I would like to revisit all of the poems that you shared today. Could you please put their names and authors in the newsletter next week?
We can do that.
Okay. Kogen, any reason, do you have any idea why you don't have any pears this year?
When it was in full blossom, it was really rainy and cold, so they didn't get pollinated.
Kogen, I wanted to thank you deeply. I've been struggling with the weight of this topic, both the weight of the environmental wreckage which humans have brought about, but more pointedly, the way that we're carrying it as a people, I think bears the marks of that same kind of brutality that we've inflicted on the earth, we're inflicting on ourselves. And you brought something today that was a real medicine for me to remember why I care. And my question is, I know many people here know you well, many people don't know you well, but those of us who do know you well know that you live in deep connection with the natural world and deep consideration, particularly for trees, but it extends to many things. And you live in a place where there's a lot of unskillful handling of that world, and yet you keep of the world of trees, and yet you keep this kind of brightness and like, what was the word Joan Halifax used? Like wise hope.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that really exudes from your being in connection with this. And I wonder if you could tell us how it is that you cultivate.
Well, I also cultivate the alternative. But thanks to Buddhism, I'm aware of that. And I'm also aware that it's unwholesome for me and the people I direct those angry thoughts towards. So, having faced my neighbors, cutting down trees for apparently no good reason, just ignorant, and I was fairly upset and having unkind thoughts. And I faced that day to day, sitting, and I go, I need to work deeply with this. And I have been, and it helps.
I want to thank you for this morning. It was definitely the medicine for me, and I realized that that there's certain points in despair or grief, and I had sort of forgotten it, that it's the natural world away from buildings. Mackenzie is Clear Lake is my heart place, and it was wonderful to be reminded.
Yeah.
That we live in the midst of these wonderful rivers and trees, and so thank you very much.
Thank you. Hmm.
Thank you for sharing that you also have no pears. I don't. And I had concluded the same thing, that the weather was so cold and dreary that it made great difficulty for the pollinators to, do it with the pears. And I want to thank you for bringing art and creativity to the foreground, because I think therein really lies some hope and some solutions, especially, there's something that creativity and art bring to us that I don't know if anything else quite can. And you really embodied that today in a way that's, I think, wonderful. Thank you.
I've often thought about, I haven't taken the Johnny Appleseed approach, but I've often thought about this neighborhood here, west of Chambers, the West Eugene. We have Pierce, Grant, Hayes, all the way up to City View. And I think about all these backyards. There's no side streets between 18th and 22nd. And there's no alleys. There's all these quarter-acre backyards with lots of trees. I've always had these thoughts, well, if everybody in this neighborhood planted wildflowers that created, attracted insects and birds, butterflies and bees, what that would look like from the sky, of a bird passing through, going, look at this wide swath, It's a great opportunity because, all these huge backyards with firs, and I have all these Oregon ash in my backyard, big ones, and different plum trees that have been broken off and destroyed by weather. And I'm often, my wife's going, let's get rid of that wood. I'm going, I don't know. I think it might be a better idea just to let it decay where it is. But anyway, in relationship to your talk, which I really appreciate.
Concerning art, I mean, everyone really is an artist. You don't need to be, Michelangelo. We all have creativity. Every human being does. However it manifests, but we do.